Hi, welcome to the Four Blokes in Search of a Plot. My name's Gordon Brown.
I'm Douglas Skelton.
I'm Mark Leggett.
And I'm Neil Broadfoot.
And for the next hour, we're going to try and make up a crime story live digitally from the four corners of the earth, which is namely Fife, Edinburgh, Ayrshire, and somewhere in Spain. For those that have seen us for the first time, welcome. Those that have been before, why the hell are you back? Over the next we'll try and make up a story. So what we need you to do is use the chat function, because we want you to do something before we introduce ourselves and tell you what we're going to do. One of the things we need from someone out there is a weapon and a protagonist. So if someone can message in with any weapon you like, it can be anything. It doesn't have to be something vicious. And a protagonist, that would help us get going. And then what we're going to do is you are going to choose one of us by the chat function to start writing a story. And that author will begin to write a story for about maybe 100, 150 words worth of a story. While they're doing that, the other three of us will answer any questions you have within reason. Yeah, mainly crime and writing questions we'll try and answer, but we'll answer anything if you want. We'll have a go at it. So what we need from you is a protagonist, a weapon, and then we also need you to choose the first author, whoever the first author is going to be. When they're finished writing, they will read their piece. We will then ask you to choose the next author. They will pick up the story and keep writing, and the other three will start chatting. So before we go on to it, we have got one famous introduction we need to make. Now, we used to do this together on stage when you were allowed.
Steady.
Yeah.
Social distancing has kept us doing this, as has the restraining order. So what I want to do is to make a special introduction.
There is a very vital part of our team, which you can't see at the moment, but I will reveal to you with a flourish. Unfortunately, this part of the team would normally be shared among us when we're doing this show live, but we can't do that this time, obviously, because we are scattered across the four corners of the globe and in Fairland. And the member of that team is the sacred tea cozy of inspiration. So I will wear, when I'm tasked to write any episodes of this story that we're going to do for you, I will wear this while I'm writing it. And when you see me turning away, it's because I'm writing on the computer. The other guys have their own headgear of inspiration. Mr. Leggett has a stand-in tea cozy. Mr. Broadfoot, what have you got, Neil?
Glenrose's Cricket Club.
All right, okay. And yes, our exotic member.
Jesus, it's Russell Gummidge.
Has a lady's hat. So
Come on. Oh, that's genius, Mark. That's genius. Oh, sorry.
Okay, it's not Russell Gummidge. It's fine. Sure. It's Gordon again. Hello, Gordon. Nice to be back.
I feel like I need to up my hat game a little bit here, gents.
Yeah. We have to pick up something to do. So in terms of protagonist and weapons, let's see. What shall we pick?
Right, talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to go and get a better hat and do a very bad impression.
It's a heartbreak. That's got to be a first.
Right. Okay. So the weapon we have is a quill pen. A quill pen, gentlemen. Write it down somewhere so we remember it, because otherwise we forget we've got a weapon. It's happened before, I'll tell you, team. So it's a quill pen is the weapon, and the protagonist is William Shakespeare.
Quill pen.
I've heard of him.
No, I think he was a writer, wasn't he, at some point? Who knows?
I think he played for Celtic in the 70s.
No football, Mark.
Right.
Especially with that hat.
Right. First author is me. So, team, you'll have to look at the public chat for the questions and take it from here, and I'm going to disappear and write for a couple of minutes. Okay? So over to
right.
Right, public chat.
First question. Lucy
Samantha
Sampson.
Brownlee asks,
Yes.
have you guys ever struggled to come up with a plot during one of these sessions? Has an audience member ever completely flummoxed you?
Oh, I have been
Good question.
recently flummoxed by an audience member, but that's a completely other story.
We've
Gordon,
never.
go on mute.
We've been lucky, Gordon.
Yes, Jordan, mute.
He's not looking.
He's away.
He's got his hat
sorry,
on.
folks.
What's those
As you
going
can tell,
on?
this is the professional Polish performance that you're getting. Back to the question. We've been pretty lucky so far. We've written ourselves, each of us has written ourselves into some pretty tight spots. I remember, was it Dumfries? Yeah, it was Dumfries a couple of years ago. And you guys put me in a hell of a corner and I had to put it all together. And that was after Mark's exploding penguins and stuff.
Yeah, you had to put together something in Paris involving somebody who was on a hot air balloon and had to kill somebody below who had a penguin. And you managed to bring it together. And I thank everybody for the drugs you took that night.
But no, we've been fairly lucky so far. I mean, I suppose the best thing is it's just fun and you just you get caught up in the moment and you just go with the flow. And just to get a dig into Mark at that point, that's exactly how all the best writing should be. It should be completely organic and spontaneous and not planned at all.
Yeah. Bollocks. Sorry, just a cough. Sorry, it's a cough. There's a question that just came up. Is that snow outside Douglas's window? No, he has a very large collection of
himself
cocaine.
going this evening.
I have my own mini climate here at Hole in the Wall. So yes, indeed, it is not a dirty window. It is in fact snow. But I can take it because I'm tough. I'm from Springburn originally, so we can take anything that can be thrown at us.
Yeah.
Right. Important question from a Facebook user is: what is everybody drinking?
Non-caffeinated Pepsi Cola.
Oh, Douglas.
Well, it was it was Jim Beam, but it's not anymore.
Have you transmuted it somehow?
No, don't do it.
I am so far being good.
Yes, I have transmuted it.
I am drinking tea so far, but once I get Douglas or Mark's first whack at it, I'll swap this. I am not prepared. I have been down this road many a time before. Oh, good evening to whoever it was, the Facebook user who is from Rosyth, who is saying hello from a wet Rosyth. Hello from just up the road in Dunfermline.
Right. What was the next question?
Can Mark give us a watch check?
Yes, he can. Oh, yes, he can. There you go.
Oh, who knows you?
Watch.
Who knows you, Mark?
That was
I know
Denzel.
who that is. That'll be Denzel.
That was Denzel, Myrick.
Tonight's watch check is a 1944 Tudor.
Oh, God, here we go.
It's not well known, but Mark actually runs the underground black market watch supplies for the entire crime writing community.
That's true.
He turned up one year, he was going to service a watch of mine, and he turned up in a hotel room in bloody Scotland, and basically, like an arms dealer, he unfurled this entire package of watches and said, "Oh, do you like this one? This one's quite smart, nice little number, you can have that." He had to get about 3 watches and 3 straps so he could take my watch away and service it.
Dear UK Crime Book Club, I'm very sorry for the sexual connotations in that last entry from Mr. Broadfoot. It is quite shocking.
I'm sorry that Douglas would smutty everything and take it into the gutter and sex, but he's very old. He's not had sex in a very long time.
That's my job.
Like a teenager with more lines, he just kind of, he twitches a bit. So I apologise for that.
Hands on the table, lads. Right, what was that one? Who came up with the idea for 4 blokes in search of a plot? I can't remember. Anyway, no, there is a thing and did the 4 of you naturally join forces? No, it's part of our reintroduction into the community. Were you already friends? Fuck no. What would I do with these?
Who says we're friends now?
Certainly not.
Outrageous slur.
Yes, that those 3 are friends of mine gives them a standing above their social strata that they do not deserve. So I'll tell you what happened.
Hold on, Douglas, can I just interrupt for a second before you start? See with that outrageous slur?
A few years ago, we were attending a Christmas lunch in Edinburgh for the Crime Writers Association. There was Mark, there was Gordon, I think Neil was there as well, and I was there.
There was drinking.
and there was drinking. I, of course, kept away from them because that's what I do generally. And Mark came to me and he had an idea about, perhaps getting some crime writers, some good crime writers together and doing a show. Not this format. So he said, "Do you know any good crime writers?" And I said, "No." I said, "But Neil and Gordon are here, and
That proved his point.
we could ask them along." So that was that Crime Factor that we set up.
Something like that.
That got set up when Laura Jones from bloody Scotland did the.
No.
Mask.
We'd already been doing Crime Factor. You're right. This format came through Laura Jones from bloody Scotland, and the Saltire Society event when she got us to do something along these lines on Facebook. And
so just to mention, so
we've been doing the Crime Factor, which was like a panel when people asked us questions about crime writing. And because we had so much fun that day doing that Facebook show, and we were also on Skype at the same time, putting on funny hats and doing all sorts of things that the people on Facebook couldn't see, we thought we would change the format of Crime Factor into what you see now, this highly polished piece of superb prize-winning, or should be prize-winning entertainment. And with that, I'll have another slug. And Gordon, put the microphone back on.
Can you hear me?
No.
Right, so you lot should have this. Okay, so it's Will Shakespeare and it's a quill pen. So the start of the story, titled to be DJ. The theatre was empty. Still the smell of sweat and cheap booze hanging in the air from the late afternoon showing. The sun was dipping behind Paul's Cathedral, and the caretaker was putting up his takings. It had been a good run up until a week ago, when a rumour had spread that there was a sickness in the theatre, and people had started to question whether even a new play, Willie Shakespeare, worth it. The caretaker dropped the coins into the box one by one. He knew his lord and master would not be happy at the paltry amount. Even the discounted places failed to swell the coffers, and the cut price ale had been a mistake. He rose, candle in hand, to place the box in the safe room and froze. Someone was watching him. High up on the stage, a pair of eyes hovered in the gathering gloom, and a sick laugh rang out. There you go. Oh, that's the start of the story. So we need to get someone else, whoever it is that's going to be next up, they need to do it.
Okay, who's next?
Who's next on this? Can someone choose somebody on the chat? Just tell one of the authors. If you just throws a name, anyone throws a name. Come on, do it. Throws a ball.
Samantha Brown, a nun. What was that, Samantha? A nun and a sock. I know I was not worn too, but right, I'm ready.
Go for it, Mark.
Right, I'm up. Right, boys. I'll go on mute. I'll do my Norman Cook call. You mute.
We've got a question here saying, I've lost it. Were you all in the classic Scotland team for the first bloody Scotland Football International? I was a ball boy.
The first one? No, I wasn't there. The first one.
Yeah.
It's that game's become legendary, especially the first couple of years. The scores were quite one-sided, and then it started to get a bit even. Scotland had a nice run. You know that the football game is played on the oldest bowling pitch in Scotland, Cowan Green in Stirling, which is fine because the first year we ever did it there, we had to ask permission. Scotland authors versus England authors in the middle of bloody Scotland. I was put in charge of, guess what, marking out the pitch. Yeah, not picking the team, not training, nothing to do that, marking out the pitch. Not knowing how to mark out a pitch, I had to ask one of my mates coming up that weekend, could he bring the spray stuff that you put down, you know, the stuff to mark it? So he bought 4 or 5 cans out of B&Q. I marked the pitch wonderfully. It was gorgeous. It looked exactly like a football pitch. Very good it was too. Game went fine. Phone call from the council 5 days later. Could you please tell us what you used to mark out the football pitch? To which I said, it's football paint. And they said, no, you didn't, because it's now burnt black in the shape of a football pitch on the oldest bowling green in Scotland. And our greenkeeper says it's going to be a year to get it back. And we're like, really? So I had to go to the cupboard to find out what I'd used, because I just had this spray stuff. It turns out my mate had not bought football marking paint. He'd bought the paint that they used to mark roads. So I had painted it with permanent road paint. So we had this is a small amount of money to the council so they could go and buy grass seed. So my duty after that was to check the canister before we did anything.
No, I've never played in the Scottish team, because if I did, the English team would have an extra man, because I'm utterly useless at football. However, I did commentate one year, and that was the year that we gubbed England. So I think you need to be having me back
when we're allowed to have such things.
The funny thing is, it's Craig Robertson. He was the originator of this. It was Craig that came up with the original idea. Mark Billingham is the England manager and Craig's the Scottish manager. And I think in the first couple of years, we had a bit of a win because it was kind of Scotland and extended family versus England, which was on the basis of we were getting some people from Sweden, Norway. We were kind of using the loose term, being north of the border, which as a result, we had some really good footballers. It kind of started of a struggle when we had to say there was only certain footballers could play, but it's a great idea. So what fuels us when you're writing normally? Coffee, biscuits, or Valium? So what fuels us? Whiskey.
And I'm empty. What fuels us, Neil?
Tea and biscuits for me. Joking aside, when I'm normally working, I won't drink alcohol. It's just tea and biscuits, and keep on going as much as you can.
I can't do alcohol and write. I can, right. And I think it. And then the next morning I read it and I realise it's not brilliant. It's not brilliant at all, and it takes more fixing. If I've been drunk when I write, it takes an intense more fixing than when I'm sober. But that's just. I'll do the same. I'll do tea up to a point, because I talk too quickly and too much anyway. My brain runs too quick. So if I get caffeine in me, I'm knackered. I quite like. I have to say, I know a few writers who are partaking of alcohol is just part and parcel of the whole process.
Well, I don't drink and scribe, because I tend to find when I've got the whiskey in one glass and I'm trying to type, I spill it, and God knows you don't want that. So I do tend to stick to just having some tea and some, dipping the occasional digestive biscuit into it, and then losing half the digestive biscuit into the tea and then having to guddle that out, because that's part of the fun of it all.
Well, the person asked the questions, are the ideas better drunk? I have a creativity training business. I don't do much with it now, but I've been running it for years and years and years, called Brain Juice. And one of the things I realised out of that was that there's the 2 pint rule, which is if you go to the pub, any idea up to 2 pints is probably okay. Any idea beyond that, you have to wake and check it the next morning when you're sober. Because I've seen senior management of multi-billion pound companies get massively overexcited about an idea and almost commission it there and then, because they've had too much lager. And then when they wake up and think about it, they go, oh, that's not quite as good as I thought it was. So it's not it's also the other one is it's not a good idea. Doing this drunk for me would just be impossible. I would lose the plot in about 10 seconds flat.
Well, you have to have the plot before you lose it, Gordon.
We do. You do. You have to have found it somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
So when you're in the swing of it, do you really want to go take a break to make a cup of tea, or do you want to just hammer through? See, when you're on a run, I don't want to do anything else. I just want to absolutely hammer on.
Yeah, when you're on the run, when the tea's there's a kind of background while you're getting the speed up, and then after that, you're just away to the races, and then you didn't take a break until you're done. Or at least I don't.
We've just been asked, which is a very good point, because I didn't do the beginning. We forgot to tell anyone what we write. Yes, we did. We did the introduction and we did not mention what we write. So, Douglas, just as a quick in the middle, what is it you write and what are you writing?
Currently, my current series is the Rebecca Connolly series, which is set in the Highlands, Inverness, and the Islands. Published by Polygon, available in all good bookshops and online and on audio. Terms and conditions may apply.
Neil?
I'm writing the Conor Fraser series, which is set in Stirling, which was inspired by Bloody Scotland. The third in the series, The Point of No Return, is out on the Day of the Dead on the 3rd of September when 600 books are out. I keep on thinking about that line from the poem, riding into the Valley of the Death Road, the 600. But I am out in hardback, Kindle, and audio, on the 3rd of September for the third.
Yep. And I've got my 8th book out. 7 of them are written under the name Gordon Brown. And eventually I got tired of getting the abuse that comes with the name or unable to find me in a search engine. So my book, 31 Bones by Morgan Cry, that's me, Morgan Cry, Morgan, because that's my dad's name, came out in the teeth of COVID in July. So it was interesting. And it's the first in a series set in Spain with a protagonist called Daniela Coulston. And there will be a second out next year already. And that's what we do.
Couple of comments here. Apparently, Mark looks like a cardinal with his tea cozy on, which will please him immensely, I would imagine. And also, from some guy called Dennis Merrick, has anyone ever seen Neil Broadfoot and Prince Harry in the same room?
No, because I can't stand Prince Harry or the monarchy in general.
No, but there we are. I have never actually seen Neil and Prince Harry in the same room. Something to ponder there, folks.
So someone else has said, have you a big flask next to you of one of those fab wee 1-cup kettle things, which I have, sitting next to you? What do you need for writing? What do you have to have in the room for writing? Is there anything you need there?
A computer I find very, very handy, and a keyboard.
Really?
Yeah. Music. I need to have music all the time. When I'm writing, there's music, and I'll carefully select what I'm listening to depending on what I'm going to be writing on that particular day, if indeed I know what I'm going to be writing on that particular day, because quite often I don't.
Yep.
And it's film music that I listen to more than anything else, so I'll select a film score that relates to whatever I'm going to do. The tea thing, no, because I like to get away from the machine as often as I can, so I will get up and just go and make a cup of coffee and toast a scone, or a scone if somebody's trying to get me to say. So he's wrong. And that's me. Neil, what about you?
About the same, yeah, as long as I've got my laptop and some tunes. I'm happy on my way to the race.
Engines are available. Sorry, just to make that clear.
Say again, sorry?
Other throatless engines are available. Tunes.
Can't hear you.
All right, sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
I think he's ready to roll.
I'm back. Right, you ready?
Yep.
Right, hold on a minute. Let's reopen the document. Sent to you boys. So we were. The last bit was someone was watching him. High up on the stage, a pair of eyes hovered in the gathering gloom, and a sick laugh rang out. She looked down from the darkness. He would be here soon to prepare for the night's performance, and at her feet was the anvil tied to a rope that she would let go at just the right moment. Affixed to the bottom of the anvil was a feather quill pen. She knew there were many ways to kill a man. A frog and a stapler was one, but the less said the better. Her black nun's habit melted into the darkness.
Oh, God.
Her black nun's habit melted into the darkness. Sister Mary Harry McClafferty grasped the clasp pendant she wore around her neck, and in it was a picture of her target. She opened it and looked at it often, and at the bottom of the photo was written in a small, neat script the word wanker. Then she heard the doors open, and he strode in. She felt a shock run through her. He still had the same effect. and she looked down at the shattered remnants of her underwear and heard the screaming of the caretaker, whose eye had been taken out at 200 yards by her knicker elastic. Willie strode towards the stage, and her hand tightened around the rope.
Right, Mark.
And that's all we have time for this evening. Thank you very much.
That's already. So, next, whoever's next up, have we got someone? Who? Tell us who's next up. Who wants to challenge one of us to do the next part of the story? Right, okay, we'll go with Neil.
Oh, joy. It's always a joy to follow, Mark. Right, question for the audience.
Right.
And I'm thinking that was Louise Fairbairn that said that it has to be time for violence.
Yes.
So, with that in mind, we have two potential tea cozies. Do we want Peaky Blinders, or do we want
Piggy?
my daughter's hat, which doesn't quite fit?
Oh,
That's totally you, mate. That's the one.
That's the one.
That's the one.
And if it falls off, you'll have to sing what you write, okay?
That'll be funny.
Right.
Remember mute?
And here.
Someone asked a question. We were talking about music. I never gave the answer. We weren't talking about music. We were talking about what you want to write with, and I need to write with music. I specifically need to write with a lot of 90s trance music. I have no idea why, because at the time I wasn't into it the same way I am now. So I've got the most ridiculous collection of trance music or electronic dance music now. I'll just run that endlessly. Yeah. The problem I have is as soon as I put lyrics on, I lose the story. As soon as I hear lyrics, I start singing and knock me away. So I just need music.
No, I'm the same. I usually have complete silence, absolute silence when I'm writing. However, occasionally you get things on YouTube called ambience videos, and one of the things I like is the sound of rainfall, and you can just have rain on a tent, right? Which is great, but after about 10 minutes, you need to go for a wee. However, you can get all these background sounds, just sort of white noise you can use. That's pretty good. There's lo-fi, chill kind of beat music, which is not bad, but generally complete silence. So I'd had to kill all my neighbours. Catherine, if you're watching, I'm not coming round. Don't worry.
I think the funniest thing about it is it doesn't really matter what's on for you, because what ends up happening at the back end of it, I just lose it anyway. Oh. Neil, you need to mute yourself. You can't hear.
I'll put him on WhatsApp.
Is Mark
one thing I was
visits to Polygon?
Eh?
It says there, is Mark's extract based on one of Skelton's regular visits to Polygon?
Yes. Oh, that's a good question. Would any produce a graphic novel? Mine would be very, very graphic, I think. Very graphic. I think some of the pages might have to be wiped clean. That's all I'm saying.
No, I don't know. I don't think my mind works in the direction of graphic novels.
Do you not think Dominic would make for a good graphic novel?
I think it'd be a cracking graphic novel.
It's too heavy. It's too reliant on dialogue, Dominic Quest, and narration for it to work as a graphic novel. And I tried once years ago to write for a friend, and I just made a complete and utter mess of it. It was his idea that he had, and I tried to turn it into a two-part graphic novel, and I just made a complete mess of it because I'm not really acquainted with the medium. I don't read graphic novels.
I do. Excellent. Yeah, I know. I've got several here. Absolutely excellent. One thing I should point out, which I was going to do at the start, was when we're writing these excerpts, it's often quite fun to make it as difficult as possible for the next person to follow you, which was Neil was going, oh Christ, it's Mark. From Alexander James Hall, what does everyone think about September's third mass publication? I'm not getting published, mate, so I couldn't give a toss.
Madness.
I understand why they're doing it, and I understand there's going to be a continuing amount of authors that have written books that you can't back it up much further, but a lot of people are going to get lost in that because there's just no going to be able to cut through. And I would say even some bigger authors might struggle in that day. It doesn't necessarily have to smaller ones.
It's a really good question, because you're right. A lot of people are just going. People are going to be going to shops. Just be swamped on Twitter and Facebook with publicity. People going to. You're right. People going to get lost. So it's you got to publish, but all at the once, I don't think it's a good idea. But some of the publishers have just got to get books out, so they just have to go and live with it. It's a shame, but maybe that's the only way.
Funny, the other thing is they're not going to agree. I won't do it and let everybody else do it. That's not going to happen, is it? I mean, the publishers.
No, it's never going to happen.
It's not going to be altruistic. It's going to be we have to get it out there. Plus, some of these. I was actually asked. My book came out on the 3rd of July, right? And when my book came out, I was actually asked at the time. The question was, do you want to into the teeth of COVID? Because there wasn't even any shops open at the time, and there was an option to say put it back a whole year. Could have just put it back a year. The book's seen as a bit of a summer read because it's set out in Spain, and my view was no, because this isn't going away, and the backup will just keep coming. Because there must be a lot of authors over the last 4 or 5 months that just haven't launched, sitting there with deals with publishers that have to go at some point.
Yeah,
and they won't be stopping looking. It's not as if you can stop looking for new authors and think, well, I've got this plot in the back, because that won't happen either.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
Yeah. The only good thing.
One of the questions.
The only good thing I can say about the September publication Bedlam is that I don't have a book coming out then, so I'm glad.
Well, one of my previous answer.
Someone said they've heard some are waiting to the 15th or waiting a week. I don't think it will make any difference. There'll be so much noise. Yeah. I tell you one thing that probably will happen. You might, if it's a slow COVID day, you might get the media on board. Some of the media might decide there's a story in there about amongst this. Some people that might not have got a turn might get one, just because it'll be something surprising. That's probably a guarantee, is something surprising will come out the pack.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Just wait and see.
Most
How do you celebrate?
Sorry.
Most memorable moments as authors. Oh, that's a good one. I don't memorable. I don't know. Well, before I was published, I joined the ITW, and who have Thrillerfest every year in New York. And I said I'd give them a hand with some tech stuff. And as a benefit of helping the tech stuff, you often get to appear on a panel, which I didn't know at the time. So they invited me to go on a panel, and I was like, yeah, okay. So to cut a long story short, before I'd even published the book, I was appearing on a panel with Mark Billingham and Peter James. And I thought, how did you blag that, son? So I had to fess up and say, I'm not actually published it. I'll just get my coat. Bye.
Douglas?
Every moment as an author is a blissful memory for me. Apart from 3, which was meeting Neil Broadfoot, meeting Gordon Brown, and meeting Matt Reilly.
The psychiatric world was never the same.
The weirdest one I've got was when I launched my first book, which was about 9 years ago. I had a launch at what was Borders in Glasgow, right? So it was Borders. And because I was completely unknown, there was a tiny little space in the corner they used to do it in, right? So it was one of those ones, we'll have a few people around. But I told everybody I knew. Like I told every friend of every friend and the rest. And by the time we got to, I think there was about 120 turned up, right? And tiny, we ended up filling the back end of Borders. And I swear to God, anyone that came in must have thought one of the biggest authors on the planet is launching a book in Glasgow today. I was standing on the stage looking at all these people thinking, I'm not really sure this is what it's meant to be, but it feels good. Neil, are you?
No, he's still at it. He's still hard at it.
He's still grinding away there.
He's grinding away. He's not got his hat on, but he's grinding away. He's got that look that an author has, and most people don't see that look of utter desperation when you're writing a book. Like, what the hell does this shit mean? How do you celebrate each publication day? Normally you have to turn up for the launch. I mean, the publication day is probably normally the launch day, so you normally celebrate by the launch, and occasionally you can celebrate a wee bit too much before the launch starts. And I remember I did a launch in Dundee, and afterwards I said, that was great, Mark. You were on form there. That was hilarious. And I looked back and I could not remember anything I'd actually said. So I would say mugfuls of wine before you go on are probably not a good idea.
No.
Seemingly I was remarkably lucid the entire evening, though, but hey, who knows?
As a guide to life, that is actually quite good. Never remember anything that Mark Leggett ever says. That way
Right,
lies.
Neil. Right, Neil.
Right,
Tom.
the job is done. Always a pleasure to follow, Mark. Right. Willie strode towards the stage. Her hand tightened around the rope. The thought struck her suddenly, as heavy and as mutable as the anvil. The assignment has come as they always did, anonymously. But the fact that she had recognised the face on the picture, the face she had known belonged to a wanker without the accompanying note, was one of those sweet little moments that renewed her faith and drove her to pull the tattered habit on again and again. This was God's doing, the universe's way of allowing her to settle the score with good old one-eyed Willie. For a moment, she was lost in memory. Another theatre, smaller than this, but somehow more alive, more vital. She had just stepped off the stage, the tears and applause from the audience buffeting her back as though she was standing in a choppy sea and had turned away from an incoming swell. He had been standing there, of course, that strange, crooked smile on his face, the one good eye glistening with pride and something darker. And on that night, he had offered her something more than a leer. He had offered her a gift. A quill. The quill that was now tied to the bottom of the anvil. With a cough that was halfway between a laugh and a cry, she loosened her grip and let the anvil fall.
Right, next up is...
Is it me
Go on,
next up? Yeah.
Oh, dear me.
Okay, here we go.
Whew.
Right, can I just say a quick thank you? I'm just coming back on and looking at all this. The Facebook user who's saying, who's bigging up my next books and saying that they would like signed copies, thank you very much. We'll make sure we'll sort that out.
Yes. See, in the future, Neil, can you keep your family off the Facebook group when we're doing the... Right.
Gordon, there's not enough swearing on this Facebook group for it to be my family.
You all have experts that you use to make sure you get the procedural stuff correct, or if you're not doing police, do you have experts? Do you get in touch with them?
I don't know. I mean, I think these coppers live next door, but I don't write police procedural crime. If there's anything I want to know, I can find it on the Wikipedia, YouTube, or whatever. Just do internet research. So not particularly. However, it is fiction, so you can just make shit up as you go along, basically.
Yeah, as long as it's got that veneer of authenticity and it sounds plausible. And the beauty for us is with Police Scotland, as long as it sounds plausible, they're probably doing it, because I don't think they know how to run it either. If I get into the more technical stuff, I mean, the start of The Point of No Return is all about a trial that collapses and how that happens, or sorry, a retrial, and then the guy's acquitted after 15 years. So I went to lawyers and I did ask about that, and I got them to check, and I got ex-police officers to check stuff about case files and everything. But that was just to make sure that it all had that veneer of plausibility again. But I don't overly research, as long as it sounds great. You know, as long as it sounds plausible, I'm happy.
Well, I had a strange one because I was setting the book in Spain. Because I had the idea to set it when I was out here, staying out in Spain, or not staying, when I was out in Spain, I had the idea. I wrote it, and it's about an expat bar, and it's about a mother who dies under mysterious circumstances. Daughter flies out, and daughter is het for what the mother's been doing. That's the story. So mother's taking money. She has to find it. And one of the things I wanted to know is I wanted to introduce the characters, because there's quite a few expat characters, and I had this idea of an interview sheet, a police interview sheet, and disperse it through the book to give a little background in each character, which I thought was a good way of doing it. But the problem is I have no idea how they do it in Spain, and I thought, well, I could just make it up. But actually, I got in touch with, through someone in Spain, another author called Perez Cervantes, who is a serving police officer. I asked him, he was brilliant. First of all, I got the wrong police force. My book had the wrong police force in it. They wouldn't have done what I told them. I had the wrong, it wasn't the right rank. I had the wrong process, the wrong form. The whole thing wasn't right, and he put me right on it. And I don't know if anyone would notice, but it helped me a lot. And the other thing I had to do this time is my Spanish is appalling, and there's a little bit of Spanish in it, and I wanted it to be right. So because I wanted the Spanish to be right, I hired an Irish lady to help me. But she's been living here. I know, that's exactly what happens. Girl called massive by checking the Spanish. Because someone out here would have read it and said it's wrong. That's just the way it would be. But that's about the extent. I tend to think most of it's imagination. Unless you're writing about specific as process in it and people know it, then I'm struggling with doing too much research. But I do know some really good authors who do know the process extremely well, or especially authors who look into forensics. They go into a lot of detail to find out what really... And actually, to be fair, that's where the idea comes from, because sometimes they'll be talking to someone and they'll tell them something they couldn't possibly know, and they'll think, that's the idea for a story.
No, there was... one of the things I'm working on at the moment is a guy who has severe anxiety attacks. And I thought to myself, do I go out and research all this, or do I just make it up as I go along? And when I was thinking about it, I thought, no, I'm not going to go out and research this and just sort of cherry pick things and put it in. I'm going to make up a character, I'm going to get right into the character, I'm going to write all what he feels and how he reacts and why he does what he does. Because in that way, it's organic and it matters. If you patchwork information in, the readers aren't daft, they can see that a mile off.
There's nothing worse than when your research shows.
Oh,
yeah, that's the killer. When you do too
Dan Brown.
And then it basically turns into an essay on the half-life of a fruit fly that's fed off the body or something like that. That's
Dan Brown's perfect for that.
It's the old thing about you do your research and then you forget your research.
Yeah,
exactly.
You read it without actually knowing that you've read it.
Yeah. If you start to put all this information in, the reader's totally going to know all you've done is cut and paste from Wikipedia. And
there was a book,
story.
There was a book years ago that I read, and there was a chase sequence in it in a city which will go nameless. But it was, and he turned left on this street, and he turned right on this street, and he ran 200 yards, and he turned left on this street. And you could almost see the author Google mapping it. And then starting it out on one side of the screen, and then on the other side of the screen going, and then he turned left here, and he went.
That's
and it was a great book until that point. But the moment I hit that, it was just enough.
Oh, there is one thing I should have done, what research I should have done in the second book. On the first book, I had a scene set in Zurich Airport, and I had my character come out of Zurich Airport through the doors and into the sunlight to a waiting Mercedes until a pal of mine, Reggie Clare, the writer, who's Swiss, said, the airport's underground. What shit.
Oh, brilliant.
Oh, that was a good one.
Samantha Brownlee's asked, has anything you've found during research surprised you? Well, I've got one tied back to when I did my first ever novel. I got a letter. Someone wrote to me about my book to explain there was a factual inaccuracy in my book, which was near the end of the book. The main protagonist goes down the subway in Glasgow at Buchanan Street and gets off at Kelvin Bridge, right? And I just happened to say something like 3 stops later he got off and he was following. Someone wrote in to say, it's not 3 stops from Buchanan Street to Kelvin Bridge. And I go, bloody is. I'm telling you, it's 3. I'm looking up the map. And then I realised what they meant was they said, no, not the platform you put them on. You would have to, because if anyone doesn't know Glasgow subway, it's just one circle. So whenever you go on, you're going to get a point. So I went up to town the next day with the book, read my book as I'm walking along the street, went down Buchanan Street subway. Bugger, he was right. I sent the guy to the wrong platform. He'd had to have gone the wrong way round. Who would notice that? But that does show you. It does that. So that was research that surprised me after I wrote it.
Yeah.
I had another
question. How do the planes land in Zurich if it's under?
I think they land as normal. But the station never goes seemingly. I've never been there. I was just making it up. On that book, though, one thing I did find as well, things that you find in your research. That book was after the Second World War, when victims of the Holocaust went to Swiss banks to get the wealth of the families that was stored there. The Swiss banks wouldn't get them unless they produced a death certificate for the person. And Auschwitz was not handing out death certificates, and the Swiss banks just stole possibly billions worth of savings and gold and property because they wouldn't release it to the family because there was no death certificate. That actually happened. That was in my first book. It's all there out there as a fact, but It's pretty grim.
Do fine stuff. Someone else says that you tempted to set your stories in exotic locations, so you have to get a feel for it.
Wait,
Like
is that what
Sterling.
yours is in Sterling? Yeah.
I set it. I was due to. I actually had a mini launch a week ago, a social distance launch. I was supposed to have a bigger launch out in Spain. I love the idea of having a launch in Spain. 4 blokes have been in Spain. 3 of us, to be fair, were out. We've done the location out here.
That was great.
That is, I only write about places I know. I don't tend to write about places I haven't been. I like to have been there, even if it's just briefly. I quite like to have been there just because I've got something in my head to visualise. So for me, if I set it in the Caribbean, it would have to have been if I'd been or where I'd been in the Caribbean.
Aye. Generally for me, that's the case. And I've been to bloody Zurich. I would have known,
You don't know.
I would have known the airport was underground.
How do pantsters research when you don't know where you're going?
As you go along, you pick stuff up when the story goes along. If you write something and then suddenly they've got to have this amount of blood loss in this amount of time, then you basically investigate it like the investigating officers or the detective would in the book. You just research it as you go along and drop it in. If Derek Farrell, sorry, can I just put a little shout out? If Derek Farrell's watching this tonight, that's exactly the way you should do it, Derek. Do not listen to Mark.
Listen to me, Derek. He is the voice of Satan.
I'm right. You're wrong. Anyway, yeah, you just that's the joy of pantstering it. You don't know where it's going, so you will go to a certain point and then you'll hit something and you'll think, "Oh, right, okay, I've got to do this or that," or you'll find, in my case, and I don't know whether you boys have had the same, that you'll have seen something in like the magpie mind that you've got. You'll pick a fact up that you think is unrelated to anything, and then 2 months later you'll be writing a book, and suddenly it'll drop in. And it's perfectly placed of, oh, right, I've got that idea. I looked at that a couple of months ago. There you go. I'll just dump that in there.
Yeah, I do pantsing, but I only do it right at the start. And mine will write a book, I'll write a synopsis, and that's where I do all the pantsing. And it'll end up like 20, 30 pages, and that's the story. After that, it's pure plotting.
It's 2017, Gordon. I know you asked me on WhatsApp time, but, it's 2017. You know, got a clock there now.
2017 was a good year.
Guys, you should have it.
So over to you for the story.
Okay. It ended with the quill that was now tied to the bottom of the anvil. With a cough that was halfway between a laugh and a cry, she loosened her grip and let the anvil fall. Willie used to have 2 eyes, but lost one when, during a performance of his lesser-known Much Ado About Quite a Lot, it fell on a comely wench among the downlands. He should have used better glue. Tonight he was unhappy. His cast had been considerably thinned out over the past 3 months. The city marshal said it was a bizarre series of accidents, but Willie just wasn't buying that. He thought someone was trying to take his entire company out. He stood on the stage, turning over the events in his mind. One actor died when someone secreted a lethal tarantula within the pages of the script. Willie thought his words had bite, but that was a bit much. Another took a drink on stage that turned out to be furniture falling. It was a horrible end, but a lovely finish. A third died in mysterious circumstances when something strange happened in the flies, but it was best not to dwell on that. There was one thing that linked all 3, and that something made his codpiece itch. At each death, there was a feathered quill found. Willie believed there was a serial quiller at large.
Oh, God. Can I just say at this point, can I be the first of the 4 blokes to disassociate myself from that level of punnery? Jesus.
So someone we've got 10 minutes left, so someone has to pick up the baton and finish the story. We need a volunteer to pick up the story, or someone can ask us out there to pick up a story. So we need someone to give us a name. Anyone out there in public land, give us a name.
Mark's got to do it.
Neil's got to do it. I can't do that.
Oh,
that needs skill. That needs skill.
Them
I always finish these things off. Mark, you take a turn.
No, Christ, I can't do that.
Come on.
I want to have a go in 10 minutes. Jesus.
There you
Right,
go,
I'm
Mark.
off.
That's 2 votes for Mark. Go for it.
Cool.
Right. Who posted Get Me to a Punnery? And do you want to come on the next panel?
What's next?
What has happened to you that really made you wonder if there's something beyond our understanding? That's a good question. I'm not really sure I know an answer, but it's a good question.
What was the question? Sorry?
What has happened to you that really made you wonder if there's something beyond our understanding?
Oh.
Mark and that tea cozy, I think it has to be up there.
Yeah, I think the sign that there's a mean, capricious god or devil tormenting you is the fact that I got drawn into the 4 Blokes and I've had to put up with Douglas Skelton for the last 6 years since I got published.
Yeah, I tell you, I read once, which I always thought is stuck in the back of my head when you're writing a book. Everybody always tells you these stories about coincidences as if it's proof, anecdote is evidence. In other words, the person walking past the phone box in the old days, the phone box rings, they're on holiday, they pick the phone up and it turns out to be their sister. That sort of story. Or chances of meeting someone you're in Spain, never been there in your life before, you walk down the road and they're your granny's long lost boyfriend, right? That sort of thing. I read an interesting book. A guy in New York, a professor, was talking about that. I can't remember which university. I think it may have been Columbia. And he was asking the question, was that the case? So what he did was a set of experiments to find out by asking random series of questions randomly to bunches and bunches of strangers. Things like, where are you from? What do you do for a job? Where did you go to school? Then he married it all together. And he realized if you're walking down any busy street, admittedly, it's probably slightly different now, but any busy street, there's a good chance you know somebody, but you'll just walk past them. I don't mean you know them, but they'll know someone they went to school with, or etc. He said it happens hundreds, you never see it. He says what he came to the conclusion was coincidences are rarer than they should be. There should be more of them, not less of them. He said putting coincidence, that's what throws a lot of investigations. They say, well, it can't be a coincidence, and he goes, it can. It just can. When you pass that many thousands of people a day, there's bound to be people there that will know something about you. And he was just so, for me, that's when you get to those, we'll talk about the handbrake moment in a story where someone writes something, you go, I've bought out of this. That's just too big a coincidence. Actually, the truth is, in reality, sometimes they're even bigger. But
there was a thing.
Buy it.
Yeah, just taking that on, there was a thing I read years ago that looking for coincidence is the human way of looking for patterns and making sense of the kind of, the irrational. But it's also a kind of confirmation bias because you're looking at it as subconsciously as you are. And when it comes to something like crime, a brutal murder or something, the natural urge is to try and make sense of something that intrinsically doesn't make sense. So by observing it in that way, you then look for coincidences and you find them by looking at it with that confirmation bias of going in thinking there must be something in this.
The conspiracy theories are the great for that.
Oh God, at the moment, yeah, especially.
So one is, do you all like to read crime, and have you got any reading recommendations? Douglas?
Yes. I would highly recommend, and I'm going to get into trouble here because I can't remember the title of it. Rob Parker did an Audible original, and I can't remember the name of it, but it's brilliant. It's narrated by Warren Clark, the guy from Luther. Hopefully this isn't being recorded because I'm about to say this. Douglas's latest, The Blood is Still, and the one that's coming out after that is brilliant. Watch for that. If you're looking for something to take you away from the insanity of these dark times, go and find yourself some Derek Farrell. And as always, you can't go wrong with Craig Russell in either the Lennox series or the Jan Fabel series.
Douglas?
Everybody who's on the screen right now got to, play the political game. This is a dangerous thing because there's always somebody that you miss out.
Miss Denzel out, so
Yeah, among the Scottish crime writers, so I'll stick with that. There are so many great writers out there. You've got Denzel Myrick, of course, who is incredibly successful, and he's sent me a check before the show just so that I would mention him a couple of times. Michael J. Malone, Teresa Talbot, they're all friends. So, I mean, there's so many. Lynn Anderson, American crime writers, which is my particular favourite. Robert Crace is absolutely brilliant. And Dennis Lehane and Irish John Connolly.
One other person, sorry, just to jump in when you said American writers, there's a guy called Mike Lupika, or Mike Lupica, I can't remember how you pronounce it, but he's taken over the Sonny Randall series.
Right.
And he is just brilliant. It's just so good. I read that at that point in lockdown where you couldn't actually concentrate on stuff, or I found that my reading mojo had gone because I couldn't concentrate on anything. I picked up this book by Mike and I just tore through it. It was just brilliant.
Well, I'm not going to go for the Scottish authors because there are so many brilliant ones out there, but there's two authors I've discovered years after I should have. One that I had read a book by and one I hadn't. So I read Puppet on a Chain by Alistair MacLean, which was written in 1969, I think, or 68 or 60, right? Phenomenally old style writing, but just addictive, just brilliantly done, really clever, really smart. Love the main character. And the other one I picked up the other day was Last Car to Elysian Fields by James Lee Burke, which I've never read any of his stuff, right? I ate that up like there was no tomorrow. And the reason I was doing it was I've started to see where we are in Spain, there's a secondhand bookshop, and I've just started to go in and say, give me something. Just don't prejudge, just hand me something. So the last book they gave us, which was Susie Steiner, Assumed. I don't know anything about it, but I've just get into this habit of taking the recommendation of the book guy. It's the same reason Perfume by Suskind, and I can't remember his first name, I got it wrong before. You know the book Perfume?
Yes.
Again, that came as a recommendation. Patrick Suskind, is it? Peter?
That story of a serial killer, Perfume, the story of a serial killer. Is that the same one?
It's the same. It's the same.
Yeah. I know the one you're on about, yeah.
Waterston's, I just said, give me something I wouldn't normally read, and that's what they handed me. So my last 4 books have not been me choosing at all. It's just people giving me random stuff, and I think that works. For me at the moment, it's just such a great way because it's not what I would normally read.
Yeah. That's one of the nice things about being an author is that you get the element of choice to a certain extent about what you're going to read next is taken out of your hands because you get proofs and everything sent to you.
Yeah.
You know, I got Denzel's latest. I got Doug Johnson's latest, the latest in the Skelf trilogy. I got Michael Malone's one sent to me. I tried to change address, but they sent me Douglas's latest as well. And, you know, it kind of takes, but it is nice that comes through the door and you're not expecting it and you just pick it up and then suddenly you're lost in a story. And that's really nice. You know, that's a really kind of nice perk of the job. What else we got?
Any tips on switching off the critical voice in your head when you're writing so you don't edit as you go along?
Well, the only thing I can say is it's your first draft. And, first drafts don't need to be good. They just need to be written. So just get the first draft done. Don't listen to anything else. Just get a draft done because that's you've got your blueprint there for your book. And that's when you start clicking on the critical faculties. If you keep criticized, if you keep second guessing yourself during the first draft, you won't get it finished. So just get that down. That's you got the spine of your book, and after that, the real work begins.
I'm kind of lucky in the fact that I worked as a journalist for 15 years, so I was trained to kind of write in a specific way. And before anybody says it, I was one of the good ones because I turned the Daily Mail down twice. But that would kind of train me to, you have to produce a couple of spreads of 3,000 words today and a splash and whatever. And you do that. But then I could, because I moved between the news desk, as it were, and the editing desk, I could flip between, right, I'm producing, so there's the copy done, now I'm editing. So I could switch that voice off and then switch it back on when I went to the editing. But I would agree with Douglas, you just need to get that first draft down. You can edit 500 words or 1,000 words of crap. You can't edit 500 words that you've not done that day.
I tend to find a way. I do it. I set myself a target. I do that Stephen King thing, which is I honestly only do this because I read Stephen King's book on writing, which is 3 bits of advice. One is write about what you like, not what you know, because 2 is start writing. You go from I'm going to write a book. I am writing a book, different mindset. And the third one was set a target, 500 words a day, 500 words a week. And I'll do 2,000 a day. When I was doing 31 Bones, it was 2,000 words a day.
Yeah.
I can't edit. If I go back over, I just take too long. So what I do is get to it. The next day, after about 5 or 6 of them, I'll go and read what I've got and make some light touches. But I'm with Doug. Got to get it down in the first place.
Agreed, completely.
It looks like Mr. Leggett has finished our... In fact, if you want to know what first drafts look like, just listen to them.
Good one, Mark. Hit us.
No, well, no, you don't have to send it, do I? I could just read it out. Right, hold on.
No, just read it.
Right, where were we? This doesn't matter where we are. It's still rubbish. There was one thing that linked all three, and that something made his codpiece itch. At each death, there was a feather quill found. Willie believed there was a serial killer at large. He heard the creak of wood above him and glanced up. "Duck!" came the cry. And right enough, a rubber duck flew straight into his head. He staggered back as the anvil plummeted towards the stage, landing on the rubber duck and shot heavenwards again, destroying the gantry and sending Sister McClafferty tumbling through the air. She landed like a cat, if the cat had been dead for 2 weeks. Willie walked over. "So, it was you all along?" "No," said Sister McClafferty, just as the anvil dropped out of the darkness and splattered her head across the stage. The quill landed at his feet. He picked it up, but the end was broken. "Sod that," he said. "She's broken my best quill." The caretaker came up and held out a thin piece of wood with graphite in the centre. "What's that?" "That's a pencil." "So what do you want?" "To be or not to be?"
I had to finish.
Sorry, everyone.
Right. I think what we should do is when we say goodbye, say what our latest book is. Just give us a chance to say thanks very much, who we are, what our latest book is. Can we also thank Caroline, who's been doing a brilliant job in the background here. With Fine Book Club keeping us under control somehow. So just a big thank you and a huge
thanks, guys,
to the whole club for letting us do this. So we'll do goodbyes one at a time. And then we have got a website, fourblokessearching.com. We will try and put the story up once bits of it. We will try and put it back up. And if we're doing any more shows, you'll let us know, because you can find us at FBlokes on Twitter as well. So we'll start with Douglas, just to say goodbye.
Yeah, my name's Douglas Skelton, saying goodbye. Thanks to everybody for tuning in and for taking part. If we didn't get any of your questions, we do apologise, but to get a bit frenzied with chats, the madness that we get up to. My latest book came out in March, was The Blood Is Still. It's the second in the Rebecca Connolly series, and the first one was Thunder Bay. Please buy both, because I've got a bank manager who's breathing down my neck. Thank you very much.
Mark?
My next book won't be out till sometime, possibly next year, when I can be asked finishing it. So buy everybody else's books, because they need the money.
Honest, Mark.
There's so many lawsuits and paternity suits around this, it's scary. So feed the barons, what I'm saying. Buy the books, feed the barons.
Neil?
My name is Neil Broadfoot, and I don't know how to follow that, really. I am the author of The Point of No Return, which is out on the Day of the Dead next Thursday, Into the Valley of the Death, Road to 600. So please look for this, and my other books, which are all set in Stirling, featuring Conor Fraser.
And Gordon Brown, although the book says Morgan Cry, because I had to change my name to it. This came out by Polygon in July the 3rd. So, and that's Douglas, his book as well. So
that's a scary smile, Douglas. Don't do that. It scares kids.
We just say thank you very much for tuning in. As I said, you should find the story somewhere in the internet once they come to see us about it.
You'll probably get a knock on the door if you try and access it, but we're not responsible for that.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, folks. It's been brilliant. Thank you.